Democrats and Republicans have basically been at each other's throats for years now, and the U.S. suffers. The two sides simply can't do their job, hammer out a budget. So we, as a nation, limp along until it hits crisis mode.
We have a very healthy economy, but our Republican and Democratic Party leaders can't seem to agree, and haven't really since the 1990s passed a full actual budget. They continue a series of budget resolutions, usually carrying forward prior spending and most often expanding it. After the big, beautiful budget bill was passed, which made some rather significant cuts to social spending, particularly in the area of health care,
Right.
Democrats made clear the next time the debt ceiling needed to be raised, there would be a cost. They've asked for about $1.5 trillion in restoration of spending around subsidies for Americans who get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act and the healthcare marketplaces. Republicans are not budging on that, and the president is using his leverage, laying off a healthy percentage of the federal government workforce, which the executive branch gets to choose which workers they deem to be essential versus non-essential. Debt service will continue, bond interest payments will continue to be made, but all federal government employees, as well as military personnel, won't be receiving their checks and income. They'll be on furlough. They'll receive those later. And the president has said, and it's been cleared essentially by a number of legal counsel in D.C., that in a time like this, when there's no budget available, you can permanently close off positions and terminate people. And they are targeting agencies, of course, that are popular, if you will, among Democratic constituencies, to make the Democratic senators reconsider their vote, which doesn't look like that's going to change either. 60 votes are required in the Senate to pass the extension.
And Bill, I also heard, okay, I want to talk about the layoffs firstly, because if indeed the White House goes through and cuts whatever employees it deems should be under the hatchet at this point, what would keep the White House, the Trump administration, from reappointing MAGA faithful back into that entity, thus giving him even more support here in Washington?
He keeps saying the cuts are irreversible. They're not, but it would if they eliminate positions. Those positions have to go back through the congressional budgeting process to be replaced. If they just terminate employees, there's nothing that keeps them from doing what you just said, essentially making Republican loyalists and MAGA loyalists the employees in those agencies. What it does appear that the president is at least talking about doing, and I think he'll follow through, is implementing some of those DOGE cuts that he wanted to make, particularly the agencies like NIH, National Institutes of Health, Centers for Disease Control, that he's had some philosophical disagreements with, as well as the Internal Revenue Service, which Donald Trump has made clear for many years, even before he was in the White House, is not an agency he's fond of, and he believes that they are unfair in the way they enforce the tax code.
Yeah, very diplomatic way of putting that, Bill. Now, the government will continue depositing tariff money, but big picture, what will this do to U.S. trade and in terms of the U.S. reputation overseas, investment confidence, or confidence that this government is even capable of governing?
We have seen previously the rating agencies already have downgraded U.S. debt, not significantly, but from the AAA bond ratings that we held with all of the agencies that were global, because of this and other economic instability, such as our growing national debt. I think with Mr. Trump in the White House, there's already some issues of concern around trade with a number of our trade partners, particularly those that are paying very high tariffs now or being asked to manage reciprocal tariffs. I don't think this shutdown will last a long period of time. I would expect if it does happen, and I believe it will tonight, we're probably looking at a couple of weeks before a deal is cut. But even if they extend, even if the Senate were to come around tonight and agree to what has been proposed by the White House, they'll be back at the table doing this again in 7 weeks. The Republican Party in the House bill that did pass only extends this to the week of Thanksgiving, right before the next congressional recess. So it's a temporary Band-Aid at best.
Okay, Bill, now when you came on, you talked about the U.S. economy being strong. It has a solid foundation, of course, but consumer confidence is tanking. Unemployment has soured further. Inflation, recession, back on the table. And I just presume all this is going to be made worse if there's a shutdown that goes, let's just say 2 weeks, as long as you talked about right there. But if it goes longer, who knows?
Well, and also recessions and economic dips don't necessarily happen universally in all places at once. So, for example, the area around Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, the suburbs of Virginia, Arlington, Crystal City, Pentagon City, or in Maryland that are closest to DC will be hardest hit in terms of non-essential government employee layoffs or permanent firings. Atlanta, where I happen to live, is the
Right.
fourth largest concentration of federal government employees, but that workforce is 4 million. So as Jim Spellman was speaking to, if 750,000 are furloughed, that's about 25% of the workforce. It doesn't hit evenly. There are parts of the country whose economies will be hit much
Mm.
harder and much more instantaneously.
And to me, we don't have a lot of time, but to me, what's sad about all of this is the Democrats and Republicans right now are doing everything they can to work on the spin to make the other side look ineffective, and they want to use this once the midterms roll around. We don't have a lot of time, but your thoughts on that?
There are no winners in a government shutdown. We've seen it fall one way and we've seen it fall the other way, depending on who's in charge. And in the White House, Newt Gingrich took the blame when he was the Republican House Speaker and Bill Clinton was in the White House. So it really depends on how it plays out and how they present themselves publicly, which is why, as you say, they're spending most of their time posturing as opposed to in chambers trying to hammer out a deal.
It's frustrating. Bill Crane, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.